I was standing at the entrance of my parents' house with a suitcase in my hand when my father looked me up and down and smiled. Not the smile of a father who had missed his daughter. Not the smile of a man who had spent 12 years wondering where his little girl had gone. It was the smile of a man who had just discovered a use for something he thought was worthless. "You came," he said. I nodded. "Yes, Dad." He glanced at my black dress, then at my suitcase. "You didn't have to dress like that. Your sister's birthday is a family gathering, not some business meeting." I said nothing. 12 years. That was how long it had been since I had entered that house. 12 years since I had walked out with nothing but a small suitcase, a broken heart, and a promise I had made to myself. I would never return. But my mother had called me 3 weeks earlier. "Please come home," she had cried over the phone. "It's your sister's birthday. Whatever happened between us, she is still your sister." I almost laughed when I heard that. Whatever happened between us. That was how they described it. As if my life had not been destroyed in one afternoon. As if they had not thrown me out. As if my father had not told me I was an embarrassment to the family. As if my sister had not stood beside him, smiling. As if my mother had not watched me leave without even asking where I would sleep that night. But I went anyway. Not because I forgave them. I went because, after 12 years, I finally understood something. Sometimes revenge doesn't begin when you hurt someone. Sometimes revenge begins when you stop being afraid of them. I stepped inside. The house looked almost exactly the same. The chandelier my father had bought when I was a child still hung over the entrance. The enormous portrait of our family still occupied the main wall. My parents stood together in the picture. My father in a suit. My mother wearing pearls. My sister standing between them in a white dress. And me? I was there too. But I had been cut out. Literally. Someone had taken the photograph, enlarged it, and removed me from the frame. I stared at the empty space for a moment. Then I smiled. Interesting. Even after 12 years, they still couldn't stand the sight of me. My father noticed where I was looking. "Oh, that old picture," he said casually. "Your mother wanted to replace it." I turned toward him. "With what?" He hesitated. "My sister's family portrait." My sister's voice suddenly came from behind me. I turned. There she was. Emily. My younger sister. The golden child. The perfect daughter. The one who had always received everything I was denied. She was wearing a glittering silver dress. Her hair was perfectly styled. A diamond necklace rested against her throat. She looked at me and smiled. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she walked over and hugged me. I didn't move. Her arms wrapped around me anyway. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You actually came." I gently stepped back. "Happy birthday." "Thank you." She looked me over. "You've changed." "So have you." Her smile tightened. My father cleared his throat. "All right. Enough of this emotional nonsense. We have guests arriving soon." Then he looked directly at me. "You can help with the drinks." I blinked. "What?" "The drinks." He pointed toward the kitchen. "You will serve the guests." I thought he was joking. He wasn't. "There will be about 80 people," he continued. "Carry the tray around and make sure nobody has an empty glass." My mother stood nearby. She looked uncomfortable. "Your father is only asking you to help for tonight." I stared at her. "I haven't been home for 12 years. And that's the first thing you asked me to do." My father laughed. "What else should you do?" He looked around the room. "You don't know the guests. You don't know where anything is. Your sister has friends, business partners, important people coming tonight." Then he leaned closer. "You should be grateful we're allowing you to be part of this." I felt something cold settle inside my chest. He had no idea. None of them did. They had invited the wrong woman into their house. My father picked up a silver serving tray. He placed it in my hands. "There's no better job you can do at this party." He smiled. "Try not to embarrass us." I looked down at the tray. Then I looked at him. "Of course, Dad." I took the tray. And I smiled. Because he had just given me the perfect position from which to watch everything. And I knew something he didn't. The man whose drinks I would be serving that night was my father's boss. And he had no idea that I was his wife. The party began at 7. By 7:30, the house was overflowing with people. Music filled the ballroom. Waiters moved through the crowd. Guests laughed. My sister stood in the center of everything, accepting compliments. I walked between them carrying my silver tray. Champagne. Juice. Water. Nobody looked at me twice. That was exactly what I wanted. People reveal themselves when they think you are invisible. I heard conversations that I would never have heard if I had been standing beside my father as an honored daughter. I heard businessmen discussing contracts. I heard relatives gossiping about my sister's engagement. I heard my aunt whisper that I had probably returned because I needed money. And then I heard something that made my fingers tighten around the tray. My father's voice. He was speaking to one of his friends near the fireplace. She was always difficult, he said. His friend laughed. The older daughter. Yes. What happened to her? My father shrugged. She made her choice. I stopped walking. My father continued. She wanted to be independent, so I let her. That was a lie. I hadn't wanted independence. I had wanted justice. But nobody knew that. Not yet. I continued walking. Then the front doors opened. The room went quiet. My father's smile disappeared. My mother turned toward the entrance. My sister stopped laughing. A tall man in a dark suit walked into the ballroom. Everyone seemed to straighten. He wasn't famous. He didn't need to be. Power followed him wherever he went. His name was Daniel Morgan. He owned the largest investment company in the region. He was also the man who had changed my life 12 years earlier. And he was my husband. I watched him walk into the room. Our eyes met. For 1 second, his expression remained professional. Then he saw the tray in my hands. His face changed. Completely. The color drained from his face. He stopped walking. My father hurried toward him. Mr. Morgan. Welcome. We are honored. Daniel didn't answer. He was staring at me. Then he whispered one word. Madam. The entire room went silent. My father froze. My mother dropped the glass she was holding. It shattered against the floor. My sister's smile disappeared. Daniel walked straight past my father. Straight past everyone. He came toward me. I lowered my eyes. Would you like something to drink, sir? He stared at me. Then he looked at the tray. Then back at me. His jaw tightened. Who asked you to do this? I smiled. My father. Daniel slowly turned toward him. My father looked terrified. What do you mean? Daniel's voice was calm. Too calm. You made my wife serve drinks at your daughter's birthday party. Nobody breathed. My father's mouth opened. Nothing came out. My sister looked at me. Your wife. I nodded. Yes. Her face went white. Daniel reached for my hand. I allowed him to take it. Then he turned toward the room. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce my wife. He looked at me with pride. The woman who founded Morgan Holdings International Division. Whispers erupted. My mother stared at me as if she was seeing a stranger. My father looked as though the floor had disappeared beneath him. But Daniel wasn't finished. He looked at my father. And the woman who owns 40% of the company you have been trying to impress for the last 6 years. My father's knees almost gave way. I could hear my own heartbeat. But I wasn't finished either. I placed the tray on the table. Then I walked toward my family. My sister took a step backward. How? I looked at her. You never asked. My father finally found his voice. You're lying. Daniel laughed once. No. He pulled a document from his briefcase. I think this will help. He handed it to my father. My father read the first page. His hands began shaking. What is this? A shareholder agreement. Daniel's voice was cold. Your daughter's company acquired a controlling interest in your largest client 6 months ago. My father stared at him. Which daughter? Daniel looked at me. Her. My father looked back at me. I smiled. Hello, Dad. He looked as if he wanted to speak. But he couldn't. Then my mother rushed toward me. She grabbed my arm. Please. I looked down at her hand. She released me. Please, sweetheart. I hadn't heard her call me that in 12 years. Don't do this. I looked into her eyes. Do what? Destroy us. I smiled sadly. You did that 12 years ago. She began crying. We were wrong. No. I shook my head. You weren't wrong. You were cruel. There is a difference. 12 years earlier, I had been 21. I had just graduated from university. I had a scholarship, a business plan, and a dream. I wanted to build a company that helped small manufacturers sell their products internationally.
My father laughed when I told him.
You?
He actually laughed.
You couldn't even manage your own room.
My sister was sitting beside him. She said nothing. She didn't have to.
She knew she had already won. A few weeks later, I discovered that money had disappeared from my father's company account.
A large amount. Money I had nothing to do with. My father accused me. He told everyone I had stolen it.
I denied it. I begged him to investigate.
He refused.
Because the person who had actually taken the money was my sister. I discovered proof.
Bank transfers. Messages. Invoices.
Everything.
I went to my father. He looked at the evidence. Then he looked at my sister. She began crying. And my father made his choice. He chose her. He always had.
You're jealous of your sister, he told me. I am not. Then why are you trying to destroy her? Because she's stealing from you.
My sister cried harder. My mother told me to stop. My father slapped his hand against the desk. Get out. I stared at him. What?
You heard me.
But Dad.
Get out of my house. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. My sister watched me leave. And as I walked through the front door, I heard her whisper, she'll come crawling back. I never did. That night, I slept in a bus station.
The next morning, I met Daniel. Not as a billionaire. Not as my future husband.
Just as a stranger who noticed a young woman crying over a broken laptop.
He bought me coffee. He asked what happened. I told him everything. He listened. He didn't rescue me. He didn't hand me money.
Instead, he asked, what do you know how to do?
I told him. He said, then start. So I did. I started with 1 client.
Then 3. Then 20. Within 5 years, my company was operating across 3 countries. Within 8, it was worth millions. Daniel and I fell in love somewhere between business meetings, midnight flights, and arguments about whether I worked too much.
We married quietly. I never told my family. Not because I was ashamed. Because I wanted to know something. Would they ever come looking for me without knowing what I had become? They never did. Not once.
Then, 6 months before my sister's birthday, my father approached Daniel's company seeking a major contract.
He didn't know Daniel was my husband. Daniel recognized his name. He asked me what I wanted to do.
I told him, nothing. Are you sure? Yes.
I wanted to see them one last time.
So when my mother called,
I said yes. I came home. And my father handed me a tray. That was his final mistake. Back in the ballroom, my sister suddenly walked toward me.
Her eyes were filled with tears. Why didn't you tell us?
I almost laughed. You never asked.
But we're family. Were you family when you watched me sleep at a bus station?
She stopped.
Her lips trembled. I was young.
So was I.
I didn't know. You knew enough.
She began crying.
For years, I had imagined this moment.
I had imagined shouting, breaking things, making them suffer.
But standing there, I realized something strange.
I didn't want to hurt them.
I wanted them to understand.
There is a cruelty worse than revenge.
It's letting someone live long enough to understand exactly what they lost.
My father approached me. His pride was gone. His shoulders were bent. He looked old. Please, he whispered. I looked at him.
Please what? I made a mistake. 12 years ago. Yes. And today?
He swallowed.
I didn't know. Exactly. I stepped closer. You didn't know who I was.
He lowered his eyes.
You thought I was nobody.
He began crying.
I am sorry.
I believed him. And somehow that made it worse. Because apologies are sometimes just another form of selfishness. People apologize when consequences arrive. Not when they hurt you. My mother came beside him.
We are still your parents.
I looked at them.
Yes.
And I took a breath.
And I am still your daughter. My mother smiled through her tears.
Then I continued.
But being your daughter doesn't mean I owe you my life.
Silence. I turned toward Daniel.
Let's go.
We walked toward the entrance.
Behind us, my father called my name. I stopped.
For a moment, I considered turning around. Then I remembered the bus station. I remembered the cold floor.
I remembered holding my suitcase against my chest because I was afraid someone would steal it. I remembered promising myself that one day they would understand.
And I realized.
They already did.
I kept walking. The next morning, my father called me. I didn't answer. He called again. And again. Then my mother called. I ignored her too. By noon, I received a message. Please come home. We need to talk. I deleted it. Then another message arrived. Your father has lost everything. I stared at the screen. Daniel sat across from me.
Do you want to know what happened?
I shook my head. No. But I knew. The contract my father had been chasing was gone. The investors who had trusted him were leaving.
The bank had discovered irregularities in his company accounts. And the evidence my sister had once hidden
had resurfaced.
My father had spent 12 years telling everyone that I was a failure.
Now everyone wanted to know where his missing daughter had gone. The daughter he had called useless. The daughter he had made serve drinks. The daughter who now owned the company his business depended upon.
3 days later, my mother came to my office.
She looked exhausted. She didn't bring my father. She sat across from me. I know you don't owe us anything, she said. I remained silent.
But we're still your parents.
I looked at her.
What do you want?
She hesitated.
Help.
There it was. Not forgiveness. Not love. Help. She wanted the woman they had abandoned to rescue them.
I stood.
I can't help you. She began crying. Why? Because I already did.
She looked confused.
I walked to the window.
I spent 12 years becoming someone who didn't need you.
I turned around.
That was the help I gave myself. My mother covered her face.
Then she said something I never expected.
Your father was always afraid of you.
I frowned.
What?
He knew you were smarter than him. I said nothing. He knew you would become something. She looked at me.
And that's why he chose your sister.
I felt something inside me crack. Not because I was hurt. Because I finally understood. My father hadn't rejected me because I was worthless.
He rejected me because he was afraid I would become powerful.
He wanted a daughter who needed him. My sister had been easier to control. I sat down.
Where is Dad?
My mother looked away.
He's at the old house.
Why?
He refuses to leave.
I closed my eyes. That house. The same house where I had been thrown out. The same house filled with memories.
The same place where my father had told me I would never become anything. I stood.
I'll go. When I arrived, the house was dark. My father was sitting alone in the living room. The family portrait still hung on the wall. Except now someone had taken it down. The wall behind it was empty. He looked at me.
You came. Yes.
He smiled weakly. I knew you would. No, Dad. I sat across from him.
You hoped I would.
He looked down.
For a long time, neither of us spoke.
Then he whispered.
I am proud of you.
Those words. The words I had wanted to hear since childhood. And now they meant nothing. I looked at him.
I used to dream about you saying that. I should have said it. Yes. I was wrong. Yes.
He started crying. I didn't.
I lost everything, he whispered.
No. He looked at me.
You lost control.
He stared at me.
There's a difference.
He shook his head.
Will you help me?
I thought about it.
Then I reached into my bag. I placed an envelope on the table.
His eyes widened. What is that?
Your house.
He opened it. His hands trembled.
I bought the mortgage.
He stared at me.
I bought the house too.
He looked confused. Why? I smiled.
Because I don't want it. What? I want you to leave.
His face collapsed.
This was my home.
No. I stood.
It was the place where you taught me that blood doesn't guarantee love.
I walked toward the door. Then I stopped. Dad. He looked up.
You once told me there was no better job I could do than serving drinks.
I smiled. You were right about one thing. He waited.
I learned a lot that night.
Then I left. I thought that was the end. It wasn't.
3 weeks later, I received a call from an unknown number.
A man's voice said,
You need to come to the hospital.
My heart stopped.
Who is this? Your father's doctor.
I closed my eyes.
What happened? He collapsed. I went, not because I had forgiven him, because despite everything, he was still my father. When I entered the hospital room, he was unconscious.
My mother sat beside him. My sister stood near the window.
For the first time in years, all three of us were in the same room.
Nobody spoke. Then my sister turned toward me. I found something. She handed me a small box. I opened it. Inside was an old photograph. Me, at age 8, standing beside my father. He was holding my hand.
On the back, someone had written, "My brilliant girl."
I looked at my sister.
Where did you find this? In Dad's desk.
I stared at the photograph. My sister began crying.
He kept it all these years.
I looked toward my father.
For the first time, I wondered whether revenge had actually given me what I wanted.
He had lost his business,
His reputation,
his pride, his control.
but I had lost something too. The fantasy that one day my father would become the man I wanted him to be.
He never would, and I finally accepted that. I walked to his bed. He opened his eyes.
For a moment, he looked confused.
Then he saw me. His lips moved.
I leaned closer. What?
He whispered, "I'm sorry." I nodded. "I know." He closed his eyes.
I held his hand.
Not because everything was forgiven,
But because I didn't want hatred to be the final thing connecting us. That night, my father died peacefully.
my mother and sister cried. I stood beside the window.
I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. Revenge had looked so beautiful in my imagination. In reality, it looked like an empty hospital bed. Months passed. My sister eventually sold the house.
My mother moved away. I returned to my company. Life continued. People eventually stopped talking about the scandal.
The business recovered. My company grew. And 1 year later, I stood on a stage in front of thousands of people receiving an award for international entrepreneurship.
The presenter asked me,
What was the hardest part of your journey?
I looked at the audience. Then I smiled.
Forgiving myself.
He looked surprised.
For what? For believing people who didn't believe in me.
The audience became silent. I continued.
For thinking rejection meant I wasn't enough. I looked toward Daniel, who was sitting in the front row. And for waiting 12 years to realize that I didn't need revenge.
I paused.
I only needed to become impossible to destroy.
The audience stood. Applause filled the hall. But then something happened. A woman walked onto the stage. She was holding a letter. She handed it to me. "Your father wrote this before he died." I froze. My hands shook as I opened it. The letter was short.
Only 4 lines. I read it once.
Then again. And the world seemed to disappear around me. It said, "My daughter,
If you're reading this, then I'm gone.
there is something I never told you. I knew you hadn't stolen that money. I knew your sister had. I knew the truth the entire time. I chose her anyway.
Because I was afraid that if you became successful, you would leave me.
I was right. But I was wrong about everything else.
You didn't leave because you were selfish. You left because I taught you that you weren't loved.
I am sorry, Dad." I couldn't breathe.
The audience disappeared. The lights disappeared. Everything disappeared.
I dropped the letter. Daniel rushed onto the stage. The last thing I remember hearing was thousands of people gasping. Then darkness. When I woke up, Daniel was sitting beside me.
My first words were, "Did you read it?"
He nodded. I looked away. Why did he tell me that? Daniel took my hand.
Maybe he wanted you to know the truth.
I closed my eyes.
For 12 years, I had believed my father rejected me because I wasn't good enough. Then I believed he rejected me because my sister was his favorite.
But the truth was darker. He had known I was innocent. He had known I was capable. He had known I would succeed.
And he had sacrificed me anyway because he was afraid of losing control.
That truth hurt more than the lie. But it also set me free. I never went back to that house. I never needed to.
I kept the photograph.
Not the family portrait. Not the picture with everyone smiling.
The old photograph of an 8-year-old girl holding her father's hand.
Because that little girl deserved to know something. She wasn't worthless. She wasn't difficult. She wasn't jealous. She wasn't a failure. She had simply been born into a family that didn't know how to love her. And somehow, she survived. She built a life.
She became powerful. She became loved.
And most importantly, she became free.
So if you're listening to my story and wondering whether revenge is worth it, let me tell you what I learned. The greatest revenge isn't watching your enemies suffer. The greatest revenge is becoming the person they once told you could never exist.
My father told me I was useless. I built an empire. My sister watched me walk out with one suitcase.
Years later, she watched me walk back into that same house as the wife of the man she had spent years trying to impress. My father handed me a tray and told me there was no better job I could do. That tray became the moment his entire world changed.
But the strangest part? I didn't plan it. I didn't need to. Life had already prepared the table. I only had to walk in.
And when my father's boss saw me holding that tray, his face turned pale.
Not because I was serving drinks, but because he knew exactly who I was. His boss's wife. The woman who owned the company. The woman his father had called useless. And the woman who had finally returned home. Not to beg. Not to apologize. Not to ask for love. But to discover that after 12 years, I no longer needed anything from them.
And that was the moment my revenge was complete. Because they finally understood what I had known for years.
They hadn't lost a daughter that night. They had lost the privilege of having one. And I had lost nothing. I had found myself.